back to the Jet Jared channel. Here we are in the decathlon. I got Jordan in the back there. And we are taxiing out of Poly Ranch here to go over to Ellington and run the A4, Skyhawk 518. So we're going to go have a good time over there, running the airplane, making sure she stays healthy. Figured we would take you along with us. Poly Ranch traffic, decathlon 5 Kilo Delta, back taxiing runway 11, Poly Ranch. And one of the things that Jordan and I were talking about was trying to help people get into GA, getting into buying these little airplanes. They're kind of a mystery to some people, but they really shouldn't be because they're actually pretty nice, pretty easy to get a hold of, and they're really not that expensive, relatively. To give you an example, I had a guy come over to the house the other day taking a look at the airplane, and he was just amazed that we had a little airplane, and he showed up in a brand new Ford F-250, and he said, wow, how much does this thing cost? And I said, less than half of what your new pickup truck there costs, and he just couldn't believe it. So, of course, his truck was like over $100,000, and this little thing was 45 grand. So, yeah, we just wanted to kind of explain to people that there are pretty inexpensive ways to get into general aviation, especially if you're talking about light piston airplanes like this, and you can have just so much fun with them, which is what we want to do with this airplane. So, again, you might notice that this thing has some markings on it that you didn't see before from the video of us picking it up from Bernie. Of course, Jordan's the one that flew me over there in the Bonanza. And we designed some stars and, of course, the Come and Fly It logo to stick on the airplane because we really, truly want to use it for YouTube and exposure to help people maybe get some stick and rudder training, some aerobatic knowledge, and just generally just share flight with people and hopefully get them more involved with flying around for fun rather than just for business. Jordan, you got anything to add to that?
I don't really think so.
Cool. Coming down here to the beginning of the runway down here. Engine's all nice and warm. We did our pre-flight, of course, and we're just going to let it warm up a little bit more, and then we'll depart out of here. So, if someone's considering an airplane, I always tell people there's two things you need to consider. Mission and budget. So, what is your mission? And what that means is, what are you going to be doing with the airplane? So, how far do you need to be going on a regular basis? And I mean most of the time, what are you going to use the airplane for? Not like dream missions, but what would you really use it for most of the time? Say like 80% of the time. And then how many people would you take flying with you on these missions? Again, 80% of the time. So don't get hung up on trying to get an airplane that can do one dream mission that's maybe a lot farther than you're ever really going to go normally and carry more people than you're ever really going to carry normally. So that's a good way to narrow it down. So budget and mission. So budget can mean acquisition cost mainly. If you're buying something super expensive, there's more to consider. Every time you get something more complex, more expensive, there's more to consider as far as just acquisition costs. So let's keep it simple for the sake of this video and talk about something like the decathlon here. So my mission for this aircraft was, like I laid it out in the beginning of this video, I wanted something that I could go do spin training with, I could go do aerobatics, hop around in my general area here in the Houston, Texas area, and it didn't need to be too fast, but it needed to be aerobatic, and something I definitely wanted to be able to very inexpensively, relatively, share with people. And of course, I own two other airplanes. They're both Warbirds, jet Warbirds. They're very expensive to fly, which makes it sometimes cost prohibitive to share flight with people as much as I would like to with those aircraft. So this airplane really opens up the opportunity for me to share it with people. So that's the mission for this airplane. So we narrowed it down. It's pretty easy to narrow it down to a decathlon in my case here for my budget. My budget was about $50,000, and luckily I already have a hangar that I can keep it in. I already have access to mechanics and friends in the community, and also a very good insurance agent, broker, who helped me price everything out to where it was very reasonable. So those are all things you're going to need to consider when you're buying an airplane. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and do the run up here and take off, and we'll talk to you when we're in the air. All right, run-up's complete, and we are ready to go. There's no traffic around. It all looks good. Poly Ranch traffic, decathlon 5 Kilo Delta, departing runway 11 will be a left turn out towards Ellington, Poly Ranch.
Lawnmower guy stopped to watch us, so I'm waving at him.
Cool. Here we go.
Oh.
Off we go. See your dad down there.
Hello, Dad.
Pretty much already see Ellington from here. Alright. Go ahead and switch to Ellington.
Ellington Tower, good morning. Decathlon 5 Kilo Delta off of Poly Ranch with Romeo, inbound landing.
And Decathlon 5 Kilo Delta, Ellington Tower, roger, you can proceed northeastbound for a left midfield downwind for runway 17 right.
Alright, northeast for a left midfield downwind for 17 right, 5 Kilo Delta, thank you.
Awesome.
And Decathlon 5 Kilo Delta is enter the Delta airspace 600 feet, please.
Okay, 600 feet, 5 Kilo Delta.
Alright. Alright, so when it comes to finding an airplane, you definitely want to find one that meets your mission, of course, but let's say you do find one that meets your mission, and now how do you narrow it down? So you can look at things like how much time does the aircraft have on it in total? How much time does the engine and propeller have on it? And those will help you narrow it down quite a bit, and of course within your budget. So you might, let's just say that your budget's $50,000, like mine was for this decathlon. Most of the decathlons which have low time and low engine time and all that, and all the logbooks and all of those things are going to be over my budget, especially if you're looking at a super decathlon.
And number 5 Kilo Delta, 1 able to squawk 5345.
5345, 5 Kilo Delta.
Alright, there we go, we'll level off here. So, and the reason that is because
7 Tango Sierra, contact Houston departure.
an overhaul on an engine like this can easily be $25,000. So, you know, if you have an airplane that's worth about $40,000 to $50,000 and it's got a relatively new engine, that does add about $20,000 to $25,000 to the value of the aircraft. So obviously that would put it outside of my price range. So in the case of this aircraft, it actually had relatively low time, and it had a really low engine time, 250 hours or so since major overhaul, which means it's been overhauled within the last 250 hours of its flight time, which makes it pretty desirable. The issue we had was it actually was missing a few early years of the logbooks, the first couple years of logbooks it was missing. So normally I avoid aircraft that have logbook missing, but this one fit my budget, and everything else in the logbook made it look like it was a pretty good and well taken care of airplane. And it just had an unfortunate event of missing the logbooks from the early years for whatever reason. I don't always recommend buying an airplane that has missing logs, but in this case, you know, I did it and I kind of rolled the dice, and I got a better deal on the aircraft because of it. So that's something to consider. So you're always going to want to look at airframe time, which would be TTAF, which means total time airframe. You're going to look at since major overhaul time, or maybe since factory reman, which is even better than overhaul because that means they took it to the factory and they remanufactured it, or just total time since new.
Ellington Tower, November 6851 Echo, TSU flight officers with information Romeo on board, request taxiway. Calling Ellington Tower, requesting taxi. If you're requesting taxi, contact Ellington Ground. Repeat, please. Calling Tower, say again. Ground, thank you. Sorry about that. If you're talking to Ellington Tower, if you need to taxi, call Ellington Ground. Calling Ellington Ground, 6518.
Alright, so we're already coming up on downwind for Ellington, but yeah, a few more things to consider is LLCs. If you want to form an LLC to limit your liability, you know, to put your aircraft into a limited liability corporation, that's something to definitely consider. You can talk to an attorney about that. If you're buying an airplane out of an LLC, especially if it's an experimental aircraft, you might consider actually buying the LLC that holds the aircraft. That way all of its approved maintenance manuals and programs and all that goes with it as a group, instead of you having to buy it and redo all that with your local FSDO. That's one thing about a certified aircraft you don't have to really deal with. You want to get a title search from a company. I use a company out of Oklahoma City that does title searches, escrow, and even registration. So I call them up, I tell them which airplane I'm going to get, give them the N number, they run a title search on it. If I decide to buy it, I could put the money in escrow, which protects the buyer and the seller. And then once I pull the trigger on it, after we get a nice pre-buy from a mechanic that I know and trust, then they can actually distribute the money and send a DocuSign to the buyer and a DocuSign to the seller. They make sure all of the paperwork is all done just correctly and submitted, and it's just the cleanest and easiest way to go about a transaction. I love using that, and it's only like a couple $100. Pretty good.
Ellington Tower, 5 Kilo Delta, midfield left downwind.
Number 5 Kilo Delta, runway 17 right, wind 24010, cleared at 2 land.
Clear to land, 17 right, 5 Kilo Delta.
So, I would say, knowing a good CFI that can help you along the way as far as getting checked out, knowing a good insurance broker or agent that you can talk to that'll help you figure out what the insurance cost is going to be. And remember, it might even not just be a cost thing, it might be a checkout thing. So maybe you're buying an airplane you don't have any experience in, and you actually need to get maybe 10, 15, 20 hours in an airplane so you can get checked out in it. It's good to know a good instructor that can help you with that, or a mentor pilot, a good mechanic to help you with all of the checkouts and all this, so as far as checking out the aircraft and maintenance and annual and all that. So these are all things to consider. We just kind of wanted to do a little bit of a video talking about all of these things that you want to consider when buying an airplane, and it's not that hard, but if no one tells you what to look for, it's kind of hard to figure it out on your own. Got anything we discussed, Jordan, that I'm kind of forgetting?
I guess the only real thing is whenever you're dealing with costs such as like an annual or hangar fees, don't forget that you can factor those into your costs whenever you're kind of purchasing an aircraft, and that's something to remember. It's not just the acquisition cost, it's as well as upkeep, an annual, and a pedostatic check and a transponder check that you also have to deal with whenever you're purchasing an aircraft to keep it airworthy.
Right.
And it's not just as simple as, okay, the airplane's $45,000, let me drop $45,000, and now I own an airplane. We have to keep up with it, take care of it, and be prepared for things to go wrong.
Number 6851, holding
And you need tires or whatever have you. So just make sure to kind of budget those things in as well. That's what makes
your radio's coming in very
airplanes like
garbled
this
and muddled.
a little
Hold
bit
short
more
17 right at Bravo.
affordable than stuff like the jets, even if the acquisition cost is the same.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Thank you. Nice stiff crosswind from the right here.
Oh, one of the MQ-9s is running over there.
Oh, cool.
5 Kilo Delta, we're going to Lone Star Museum today.
And number 5 Kilo Delta, roger, continue taxiing down the runway, turn right on Charlie.
Right on Charlie, 5 Kilo Delta.
So yeah,
5 Kilo Delta, hold short of hotel, once you're off on Charlie, hold short of hotel and contact ground.
Charlie, hold short of hotel, going to ground, 5 Kilo Delta.
November 6851 Echo, understand you're requesting pattern work here at Ellington, is that correct?
51 Echo, we would like to fly 1,000 feet and just to the east, and we'll come back for pattern work. 51 Echo.
November 6851 Echo, runway 17 right at Bravo, line up and wait. Line up and wait, 6851 Echo, thank you.
yeah, so like Jordan was saying, it's important to budget more.
6851 Echo, so the first transmission was loud and clear. The second one, the most recent one, was a little bit, it's kind of like mumbled a little bit, so I'm not sure if you have the...
All right, we'll call ground and then we'll finish talking about that.
Ellington ground, Decathlon 5 Kilo Delta off at Charlie, hold short of hotel, going to Lone Star.
Number 5 Kilo Delta Ellington ground, taxi to parking via hotel and Kilo.
Hotel Kilo to park, 5 Kilo Delta, thank you.
So like Jordan was saying, it's important to budget more than just the acquisition cost. And a lot of times on these little airplanes like a Decathlon, the acquisition cost actually is the higher cost. Now, if you start getting into something like a turbines or even jet warbirds, stuff like that, the operational cost is something to be considered just because it's so steep compared to something like this. For example, I own a Fallen Nat and a Jet Provost, and I can fly this Decathlon for about 38 to 40 hours on the same amount of fuel cost as I can fly one of those jets for 1 hour. So it's very important to budget that kind of stuff. And if you're going to buy an airplane, you want to make sure that you have a place to put it when you get home with it, whether it be a hangar, which is always preferred, or at least a tie-down. And if you are going to bring an airplane home, you want to make sure you have a couple of things ready for you when you do arrive, like chocks, maybe a case of oil, or at least a few quarts of it, and stuff like that. So you always want to make sure that you are set up on your end for receiving the aircraft that you just bought by the time you get home. So all these little things to consider, it's very important. And of course, always reach out to either your CFI or maybe other owner pilots in the area. Might be able to steer you in the right direction as far as who do they use for maintenance, who do they use for insurance, and all that kind of stuff. And if you have any questions on any of this stuff, please put it in the comments. I know this was kind of a hurried way to talk about it, but we just wanted to kind of throw some stuff out there and let people know owning an airplane, especially a little airplane like this, is not as daunting as you might think. And it just really expands the horizons of what you can do in general aviation. It's just really amazing.
It's so much fun, and a lot of flight schools these days, you miss out on the joy that comes with general aviation because the way they pitch a 172 to you is it's a flight training aircraft, whereas 172 is a very fun airplane. You can go to flying, so you can do fun stuff with this kind of airplane. Seize your opportunity to do it if you can afford an aircraft, because there are so many fun people out there and events that you can go to where you can have a great time with people. It's just, it seems daunting and scary and like there's a ton of paperwork involved, and it's just not the case.
Yeah, well, even something like this today, as we're about to turn this corner to the left, and you're just not going to believe the amazing beauty that awaits us over here. We flew over here to Ellington instead of drove, just so we could have the fun of doing it, and there is the beautiful Skyhawk 518, which I've been fortunate enough to take care of for the last 5 or 6 years, and I just can't tell you how fortunate I've been to be able to play with that airplane. And we're coming over today to do an engine run for her, make sure she stays nice and healthy, and even when we're not flying her, we try to run them on the ground. So here we are. We're over here at Lone Star. If you're ever down at Ellington, come check out the museums. Ellington has amazing museums. They have the Lone Star Flight Museum, which we are here at right now, and they have the Vietnam War Flight Museum, which Jordan and I work at all the time, and just incredible stuff. What other 2 museums we got over here, Jordan?
We've got the National United States Armed Forces Museum, which if you ever see the helicopters in the background of any of the Vietnam War flight videos, those are them. And there's also the Collings Foundation here at Ellington Field, and that's where you get a lot of the Vietnam War flight heritage collection, so the privately owned F-4 Phantom of the United States, the 262, and a bunch of other aircraft over here as well.
Yep. Well, thank you so much for watching, and we're going to go run this beautiful little A4 over here, and we'll get back at you later. Thanks for watching.